All right, welcome to the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up Show for the week of 17 April 2022. We got Lemon Duck or Lemon Curry, I'm not sure, Crypto, Pwn2Own, Google, Microsoft, and Sinclair. All this and show wrap-ups on the Security Weekly News.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week. Your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News. Cybercriminals are working overtime. Last year in the fourth quarter alone, phishing attacks disguised as COVID testing information increased by 521%. Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats and how cybercriminals use them to steal money from your company or personal information from your employees and customers. Find out about the 13 email threat types and how Barracuda can provide complete email protection for your teams, your customers, and your reputation. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Monitoring and maintaining compliance is a never-ending struggle with a high price of failure. Firemon helps customers meet complex and varying compliance requirements. Firemon has fully customizable reporting, analytics, assessments, and dashboards to meet the compliance needs of any organization. With Firemon, compliance reports take 1/10 of the time, and real-time continuous compliance eliminates the anxiety and headaches of audit preparation. Improve security outcomes by improving security operations with Firemon. Visit securityweekly.com/Firemon to learn more.
Hello, I'm Doug White, and this is the Security Weekly News Wrap-Up Show, episode 206. Wow. On Application Security Weekly, number 193 this week, John and Mike first talked about how to create metrics for use in AppSec programs and how to avoid just choosing easy metrics. And I mean, certainly, I think all of us have seen that kind of thing where we pick metrics that are easy to measure. I mean, that's a statistics mistake a lot of times, is you're trying to measure things. And I think people do that in AppSec as well, because it's like, well, this is tough. We'd have to figure out how to do it, how to get an instrument, how to, and on and on and on. So, interesting segment. In the second segment, the AppSec news. On Business Security Weekly, number 259, Ben, Matt, and Tyler had Tim Woods on the show. Tim is the Vice President of Technology Alliances at Firemon and was on the show to talk about hybrid clouds and how this has created, basically it's kind of like the universe. It's an ever-expanding perimeter. And so how do you deal with that? And how do you deal with all the new threats that emerge when you start putting resources in the cloud? I think all of us are moving in that direction. I mean, I know I have stuff now that's starting to just bleed over into clouds and cloud space and so forth. So they were talking about all that, complex scenarios, even more security responsibilities. Work smarter, not harder. Yeah, right, as they lay off half the staff and tell you to do more with less. In the second segment, the Business Security News. On Enterprise Security Weekly 270, Adrian Cady and Tyler Shields had Dan Allen, the VP of Enterprise Security Solutions at HP Inc. on the show. The segment was Dan showing how HP's product called SureClick can help you with security efforts. So it was a product demo. Always, those are usually pretty... I always learn something when I watch those kind of things. In the second segment, Will Lynn, the managing director and co-founder at ForgePoint Capital, was on the show. In the third segment, the Enterprise Security News. On Security Weekly News, number 205, Jason Wood returned to talk about how NATO is playing cyber war to prep for real Russian attacks that are sure to come. So, it's a pretty interesting article about that and how, we are starting to see the kind of prep stuff for an actual cyber war. And, I don't think a lot of the old rules apply. I don't know how that manifests. And I am worried that nobody's really prepared for what may happen in days to come. But, who knows? On Paul's Security Weekly, number 737, well, it was without Paul since he was away, and they foolishly let me host Paul's Security Weekly for only the second time in all these years that I've been coming over here. But Paul never misses his show. So, I mean, he's always here. He's like a fixture. So there really aren't that many opportunities for the understudies to step into the role of Paul Valjean. But anyway, first up on this show was my old friend, Major John Alfred, who's a retired Rhode Island State Trooper. And John was instrumental in building one of the first computer crimes unit in the United States. He said he didn't think it was the first one. When they built it, I thought it was the first one. I'd never heard of such a thing. But we had a lot of fun talking to him about how investigations evolved over the last, 15, 17 years in computer crimes and that sort of thing. And we moved on. In the second segment, John Alfred was joined by Tom Leonardo, who's been on this show before, who's an attorney, famous for writing the Leonardo paper and about digital forensics, private investigation, and stuff like that. And so Tom's always a fun guest and is a very knowledgeable guest. And we just did a segment where we were talking about privacy mostly. We got started talking about LinkedIn and HiQ and then public information scraping and whether that's legal and when it's legal, and then facial recognition. And I was going to talk about obscure hacker movies because the first segment I said I told everybody to think about an obscure hacker movie, and I had the book about hacker movies, but we ran out of time because all those privacy cases were actually really interesting. I thought it went well, but I'm sure you will let me know what you thought about it. And in the third segment, Tyler and I did the security news. My threat of the week is going to be crypto wallets. Well, actually, not really. The article is about crypto wallets, but your wallet's safety is a real threat, even if it's not. So I thought this article, which I talked about in the news on Security Weekly, and I thought it was a little bit misleading because the title says MetaMask has got a problem. But the real problem had nothing to do with MetaMask. And MetaMask, if you aren't aware, is a very common crypto wallet. It's very popular. The headline's not untrue because a MetaMask user did get ripped off for like $700,000. But, it wasn't really a problem in MetaMask. Money was stolen. Theft happened, but it wasn't their fault. It was the user's fault. And so I'm not going to blame users because users are just users and they always have been and they always will be. But, basically if you have a hot wallet, and that means it's on your mobile device or some, it's live. So, and most people have hot wallets, but, that's where you should keep the minimal amount of your stuff because there's all kinds of things that can happen to hot wallets. But basically what happened in this case was the person backed up their mobile device and the seeds, and that's, of course, the key to that hot wallet, is in the backup. So this isn't a flaw in MetaMask. It's not even a flaw in backing up. It's not a flaw in the wallet. It's not a flaw anywhere. It's just the fact that those seeds, which you have to have, are in the backup. So if that backup gets compromised, then those seeds can be used to access the wallet from some other site, and all your funds are transferred to a guy named Carl who lives in French Polynesia. So, so what is to blame? Well, nothing really. It's kind of back on that, open bit bucket stuff that we had a few years ago and still goes on, obviously. But people back up their iPhones, and you should back, we never stop telling people to back things up, and I tell people to back up their phones all the time. You can back up an iPhone without a password, which is really bad. You can back it up without encryption, which is really bad. And you can take those backups and, even if they have a password, well, somebody can crack the password, they can guess the password, or they can get it by recovering your security or guessing your security questions. And I did this whole thing that was it was a criminal case, and I was asked to consult, and it's long gone, so it's not a matter. But this person that was involved in the criminal case basically broke people's security questions to get their iPhone backups. And they were doing this to get nude photos, but I mean the idea is exactly the same. And I mean, why do you care? And so in this case, the person actually had someone cracking iPhone backups, and the deal was he got the nude photos, and the person cracking the backups got to keep everything else, which would include financial information that would be in those backups. And he was guessing security questions just by looking at their social media feeds. What's your first car? What was your first pet? And what's your mother's name? The stupid quizzes that they put up every single day, like your middle name and your mother's middle name are your porn names. Yeah, but anyway. All that OSINT that we know about, we know to fake or keep on the wrap, but, not everybody's paranoid, and not everybody listens to these podcasts, and voila, you got a problem. So in this particular case, it was simply losing control of the copies of the iPhone backups that were stored in the iCloud, and that allowed people to extract these seeds from the backup. And so it's really easy. After I read this article, I started thinking about it. It is really, really easy to end up with iPhone backups all over the place. I mean, even if you're just backing it up with iTunes on your local hard drive, you know, but then you realize that and I actually went and looked at mine, and I had a backup, and I had a folder backup that was on an old hard drive that's in that machine, but then I had actually copied that backup folder into 2 different places, which I'm not going to tell you where those places are, but I had copied that backup into 2 different places that were not accessible, but they could have been accessible. So if I had not set up some of these places correctly, they could have been accessed by somebody else who could then have stolen that backup file and cracked it. And, you know, if I had a hot wallet in there, they would have a seeds. So if that does get compromised, and it could get compromised by credential stuffing, right? So there's all kinds of ways that people could get access to these backups if they're on AWS, if they're on Google Drive. And I actually asked a couple of people, where are your iPhone backups? And a couple of different people, one person said, oh, mine's on Google Drive. And I was like, is it on a safe Google Drive? And on and on and on. So if your photos, your wallets, your credit cards, or whatever are in that backup, and somebody can get hold of it, well, you can sort of follow that chain through to the end. So first and foremost, I think that everybody should sit down and just take a minute and think about, where are my backups and where are they being stored? And am I copying them from this folder to that folder? Am I putting them on OneDrive? Am I putting them on Google Drive? Am I putting them in Dropbox files? One person said they used a Dropbox file for that, and I was like, it's not public, is it? And they were like, no, it's not public. Well, okay, but a lot of people don't know how to set those permissions correctly, as we have seen over the years. I think you really need to protect those wallet keys very, very carefully, because this is just like your bank account. I mean, this is like you taking money, putting it in a chest on the front porch of your house, and leaving the keys hanging on a hook. I mean, you really don't want to lose these things, or, you know, these stories where, and you see these things, you know, where all your stuff is gone. I had all these Bitcoins or whatever. But you also don't want to lose your wallet keys, because if you lose your wallet keys, then you get that other story that you see in the news where I bought 100 Bitcoin back in 2005. If only I could get into the wallet, but nobody can get into it. Well, then, you know, we'll be rich. But writing down wallet keys can be pretty dangerous if you just write them on a piece of paper or whatever. If you put them in text files, or you put them on your hard drive or whatever, and they're sitting out there, then other people could see them. They can get them. You know, I saw somebody who had wallet keys on their desk one time, and I was like, you should really put these away somewhere. And the guy was like, well, you know, none of that stuff's worth anything. And I'm like, well, okay, but it could be. And people will steal $5, you know. I mean, people used to steal like dollar bills out of people's desks. But if you lose those backups, you can really have a problem. I do think that online money is very, very dangerous. And I'm not saying I don't use it, but I'm saying it's very, very dangerous. And it's very, very tempting, because now you've got a big fat wallet, and it's sitting in a public place. And yeah, it's got some keys associated with it. But when you got wallets sitting around all over the place, and everyone in the world can actually know that those things are there, it's pretty tempting. And so, you know, you need to have a backup plan, absolutely. But you need to protect your keys, and you need to have a double protection of that. And I think Tyler and I talked about this on the show. You know, we were talking about my old red key, or my red card system, where I was telling people to put those keys in a safety deposit box, which sounds like something a really old person would do, because I think a lot of young people don't even know what a safety deposit box is unless they've watched it in a movie or something. But, you know, banks have those. And that might be a place to put that, you know, slip of paper that's got your keys on it. You need to use multi-factor authentication. You need to use different passwords on everything, on every site. I mean, I'm sorry, but if it involves money, do not use the same passwords that you use anywhere else, because all your passwords have the potential to be compromised. I mean, I don't really care if somebody gets into my account at mrfufu.com, but I would really rather that you don't get into my bank account, my investment account, my crypto wallets, or any other financial resource I have, since if you're in there, moving money around is really, really easy. And I actually went to a couple of my financial accounts and looked at how easy it would be to transfer money off that account to some third-party account. And I mean, it is really, really easy. I mean, I could literally set up a payment in one of them and just hit go, and it's gone. The money is wired to some bank in Panama, and that's the end of it. And, you know, I got news for you. If it's gone, well, it's gone. And if you watch this segment the other night with John Alfred talking about, you know, because one of the questions I asked was like, what do you do? And it was like, well, there's not much you can't do. Some guy ripped me off at a bank in Panama. Good luck getting that back. So you do need to think outside the box, and especially these traditional, you know, bit bucket kind of thing. And you needed to think about that when you back up your computer, because remember, if you're backing up your computer and you're putting those backups somewhere public, which a lot of people do, you may have everything in there. All your passwords, everything may be contained in that backup, and it may be extractable if somebody gets hold of that backup and pulls it out of there. So where is it? Who can access it? And, you know, do you know where all of them are located? I mean, every one. So even that, when you made that time when the fan was screeching and you panicked and you saved the whole thing onto that Linux server that you used to support over at Glorfeld University, yeah, even that one, which is probably still sitting there. I mean, you probably need to get a handle on this, because I was literally thinking about that the whole time I was writing this. And when I read that article, where do I put all my backups? And I have backups. And I was like, are they just in public places? And what is in them? And you start thinking about, well, I backed up the whole main system drive on that laptop. And it's got keys, it's got tokens, it's got passwords, it's got all kinds of stuff stored in there. And a lot of those things are stored locally, and they're not necessarily encrypted or protected. So if somebody got that backup, guessed the password to it, or cracked it, they're going to get it all. And it's really easy to lose a lot of money, especially if that password that you use to log into Windows on that machine is in the backup, and that's the same password you use to log into your bank. So, you know. And if they have a backup, they could just restore it, right? And maybe they restore it and just log in. Yeah, so protect those backups, really. And now the news. A large crypto mining campaign from Lemon Duck Botnet is targeting Docker APIs on Linux. So Lemon Duck, which is one of my favorite names of all time, it's better than Eyeball McSqueezy. Well, I don't know. Eyeball McSqueezy is pretty good. I mean, that's my name for Microsoft, but Lemon Duck's pretty good. But they had previously focused on Windows attacks, primarily using SMB Ghost as the vector, and then they switched to Linux using SSH brute forcing, which I was like, really, that's a thing? I mean, obviously brute forcing is a thing, but I mean, that doesn't seem that productive, but maybe it is. I mean, like, maybe people really do have lame passwords all the time. I guess they do. Maybe I'm naive. But it would appear now they found a new approach using Docker. So according to article, they target exposed Docker APIs. So that was like immediately, I was like, really? But then I think about it, I'm like, people expose everything. They expose their management interfaces. They expose their NASs. They expose Docker APIs. And then what they do on these exposed Dockers is they push a malicious container in there that pulls down a bash script. And the bash script looks like a PNG file, and it's a cron job. So they have a cron job pulling down what looks like a PNG file that's actually something else. So this batch file is called a.asp, and there's a whole bunch of grim detail in this article if you're worried about this. But basically, this script kills all the... It's really interesting because it's almost just a gang-related sort of thing. It's like the script kills all the processes that might be mining-related. So it looks for stuff that's known miners, kills them all, I guess they're wanting to make sure they're actually mining on something that's worth mining on, like it's powerful enough. So they kill all the mining scripts, they kill cron D, they kill SSHD and syslog, which I guess keeps you from logging in and fixing it. It sort of hides itself a little bit. It changed some stuff around so it was harder to see. And then it targets any connections that could be competing command and control servers for miner groups. And it disabled Alibaba Cloud Monitoring Service, which sort of lets me know where they're trying to target with this stuff. But anyway, the whole process proceeds to run crypto mining utility XMRig, and then it attempts lateral movement. So it's also a worm. It tries to use SSH keys that are stored on the system and then uses those to try lateral movement to other Linux systems. And if it can do it, it infects that system as well. So pretty nasty. Team TNT has also been targeting exposed Docker APIs on AWS. So everybody's coming for your Docker APIs. So if you've got your Docker APIs exposed, Docker does have a best practice guideline and security recommendations available, and it is really easy to expose stuff through Docker. So you probably should review your posture, make sure you don't have this stuff exposed. And if they're doing it on Alibaba, they're going to be doing it elsewhere. There are links in the articles to all the recommendations and the security guidelines from Docker, so check that out. It does appear that Revil is back, or R-Evil. I don't know. I always called it Revil, but maybe it's R-Evil. R-Evil sounds better. But 3 months after the 14 alleged members of Revil were arrested, their old website now forwards to a new website that lists both previous and new victims. Russia claimed back in January that they had dismantled the Revil network and arrested 14 members of this gang, and Revil seemed to disappear at that point, which could also just mean it's the Russian government, and they're just like, shut it down. We'll come back later. But it basically evaporated. But this week, Pancake3 and Sofiana Tahira found that on a leak site, they were promoting, or I'm sorry, they found the latest Revil leak site was being promoted on the site RUTOR, which is a Russian language marketplace for this kind of material. And I mean, honestly, it's really hard to tell if this means it's the old Revil or it's some new Revil, and does it even matter? I mean, I guess if I violate the trademark law in Russia, which I think just involves paying Mr. Putin some tidy sum, and then I claim to, excuse me, I claim to be Klaus Nomi's Ghost, which is one of my old bands, well, so what? I mean, does it matter? I mean, if it's Revil, if it's some new Revil, if it's an old Revil, if it's Revil reconstituted, I don't know. So is it Revil or new Revil or Diet Revil or Revil Zero or any of these kind of things? Is it Revil Awakens, Hillbilly Cannibal Holocaust Revil, or just some guy named Borf that decided to put up a site and say, Revil's a coming? I mean, in the ghostly world of ransomware gang, anybody can be Revil. And, and the only real consequence is that sometimes if you try to pretend to be someone else, the old someones may attack the new someone's website or dox them, or maybe send over the Russian, military police to drag you off to the gulag. So, who knows? Pwn2Own Miami 2022 at the S4 conference has concluded, and competitors earned $400,000 for 26 separate zero-day exploits that targeted ICS and SCADA products. Yeah. So, hey, you might want to check that out. This was a contest between the 19th of April and the 21st of April that targeted control servers, OPS Unified Architecture Server, Data Gateway, and HMI. This was all some of the categories in this very large collection of ICS SCADA world. The exploits from the contest are reported to the vendors, and the vendors then have 120 days to patch before ZDI releases all these exploits to the public. Dane Cooper and Thijs Alkemada, sorry guys if I mispronounced your names, and I'm sure I did, from Computest Sector 7 were declared the winners with the most points and were awarded $90,000 for all of their different exploits, and they got to hold the title Master of the Pwn. There is a cool video attached to this of Computest Sector 7 team targeting the OPC Foundation OPCUA.net standard that they talk about. It's attached in the article. So if you're interested in that, check it out. Google has announced a new policy that will effectively ban call recording apps from the Play Store. I'm not sure why. Google has been targeting apps that use Android accessibility APIs for non-accessibility reasons. I mean, that kind of sounds, I guess, reasonable. But accessibility apps, if you're not familiar with them, are tools that facilitate people with disabilities who need to utilize apps, and makes it easier for that. I have a friend who's blind, and he uses various accessibility apps so he can function. Google announced that call recording is no longer allowed using the accessibility API. And apparently, that was the only API on Google Play that would allow you to essentially record calls. I mean, I guess you can't legally use it unless you're an accessibility app that has been approved. So NLL Apps, who is one of the developers of a cell phone recording application that has more than 1 million downloads, said they had been tracking this policy, said that the new policy will be enacted on 11 May and essentially will stop all call recording apps from being allowed on Google Play Store. It's not exactly clear why they did this, but they had changed other use cases in the past related to accessibility APIs as well. So if you go back, they did go through and say, we don't want you using this for other purposes, even if it's, not necessarily illegal. Call recording is possibly illegal in your location, possibly not. Some locales in the United States require the consent of both parties before you can record a call, but others don't, So it would seem to me that misuse is their reason, but maybe not. I don't know. It's a strange story. Speaking of Google, Chrome reported 58 zero-day exploits in 2021. That was the most ever recorded for the widely used browser. They had 25 zero days reported in 2020. Google said that it wasn't that the code was worse. Of course they said that. And they may be right. They said basically it was just there was a lot more detection and disclosure of 0 days now than there had been previously, which makes a lot of sense. In fact, the number of reporters finding threats doubled in 2021. So the argument seems to be kind of valid that there's just more people, looking for 0 days, bug hunting, and so forth. According to the article, the troubling thing about all this is that a lot of these 0 days are just variations of known hacking techniques, rather than being new and unusual bug classes. So, that basically means there's more people bug hunting, there's more disclosure of hacking techniques, and much more documentation of these techniques and how to do them. So if 0-day X is found, a lot of people immediately start trying 0-day X prime techniques to everything they can find out there, and and they're finding these bugs. So notably, though, of the 58 0 days in Google Chrome last year, only 2 of them were really, really dramatic ones, particularly the forced entry exploits, which was most likely developed by NSO Group so that they could install Pegasus on people's phones with 0 clicks. So, the whole thing becomes a big issue to me about if it's not new 0 days, it's not really even a 0 day then. It's really just bad code. So, fix your code. But for all of us, keep patching in the meantime. In the big book of maybe big corps behaving badly, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint has been tagging Google Chrome updates via Google Update as suspicious activity due to, according to Microsoft, some sort of false positive issue. According to Windows System Admin reports from earlier this week, Defender started marking these things as suspicious. Now, the cynical part of me is like, that sounds like something a corporation would do. Like, let's flag all our competitors' stuff, And there's a lot of conflict of interest, in all this with browsers and search engines and now Microsoft Defender. There's an awful lot of potential for abuse there. But, considering the number of 0 days in Chrome lately, maybe it's not that bad of an idea. But anyway, Microsoft said that they were a false positive, not actual malicious activity in a statement. And apparently the false positive indicator was addressed. And Microsoft did say the issue had been addressed and service had been restored. Honestly, it didn't sound that malicious despite the tone of the headline. It is an anti-malware tool that's seeing another tool trying to modify Google Chrome, which is, notorious. So it's not that smart. Defender's probably not that brilliant, despite what the marketing material says. Now, if it had popped up a window that said, why not try Edge and Bing instead? That might have been a little more suspicious. Yeah. And finally, tomorrow will mark the 40th anniversary of the Sinclair ZX Spectrum computer. Way back in 1982, the ZX Spectrum was released, and it contained either 16K or a whopping 48K of RAM. Yeah, now you're talking. And it had this kind of rubbery, squishy keyboard thing. Yeah, it was supposed to be really tough. Like you could carry it around with you wherever you went. And it had a basic interpreter on it that was in ROM. Now, it didn't have a monitor, so like a Commodore 64, it did not have a monitor, but you could carry it around with you and plug it into a television. And we actually used an old black and white 15-inch TV that had rabbit ears on it to run this. You had to actually screw it into the antenna connector on the back to get the signal and get that. Listen to this. 32 by 24 column display and a 256 by 192 pixels. So whether you need it or not, let me tell you. the way this thing looked, it didn't look very good. And my uncle had a Commodore 64 that looked really good. It also didn't have a monitor, though. The Sinclair sold for about $125 US, which was 175 pounds for the 48K version, and you did have to order it from like a magazine or something. I think I don't know if we got ours out of Computer Shopper or we got it out of something else, maybe even like Radio Shack or something. I don't remember where we got it, but it was so much cheaper than the Commodore 64 because the Commodore 64 cost about $600. I think the one my uncle bought was about $600, and my dad said that was too much. But that's about $1,500 today. The Sinclair was really cheap comparatively, and I don't know what happened to mine. I think my dad probably tossed it when he cleaned all my stuff up and threw it all away. But it could be in a box somewhere, and sometimes you find those old treasures. I wish I could find my MGB, but I haven't found that yet. And that's a wrap-up for the week of 17 April. And I'm Doug White. I'll see you next week on Security Weekly News.